everyone. My name is Tunde, and I'm starting something. I'm going to be dropping a video every day talking about, uh, you know, architectural problems and solution. It can range from DevOps to software engineering. I'm going to be talking about futures about from different technology and how it can help you solve a problem. Now, today I'm going to be talking about Kubernetes, blue-green deployment, and rolling updates. So deployment strategy using Kubernetes. Now the first one I'm going to be talking about is the rolling update. For those who are in the Kubernetes ecosystem, they know the concept of deployment, right? This is a sample deployment. We are trying to deploy a sample Nginx application. Now, you can use a deployment strategy of rolling updates, right? What is rolling updates? Rolling updates is how the deployment makes decision about container or pod replacement. How it makes decision about pod replacement. For example, if I deploy this particular application and have three replica running, if I need to upgrade my application using rolling updates, I simply define my rolling update. Although this is default, right? This is default, and the default value of this is 25% and this is 25%. But in my case, I want the maximum surge and the minimum unavailable to be these values. What is the maximum surge? Maximum surge simply means the how much above can how much beyond your desired replica can you have at a given time. For example, let's say I have a replica of 4, and I say maximum surge can be 50%. That means there can only be 150% of 4, which is 6 replicas running at any time. That's the maximum that can ever happen. And also, I have a desire of 4 instances, 4 replicas running at a given time. When you say minimum unavailable, simply means that there can be maximum of 1. Sorry, a minimum of 1 that is unavailable. That means out of these 4, at any given time, regardless of the rolling updates process, there can only be 3, right? There can only be 1, sorry, at most that is down. That means 3 has to be running at all time. There can only be 1 out of those 4 that is down at a given time. 3 has to be running. That's the minimum of this maximum surge. So if we want to update this our web deployment, we want to update our app to from 1.7 to 1.8. So what happened is, so Kubernetes, the deployment controller, actually creates a new replica set that tries to replace the 1.7 replica set, and using the rolling update process. Excuse me. So what happened is what it does is it can remove one pod, since we gave it the ability that you can take out at most one pod. It can launch one pod and remove one. So it can launch, how do I say this? It can launch one of 1.8 and remove and get rid of one of 1.7. Right? Once the 1.8, this one becomes available, you can go ahead and also add another one of 1.8 and remove another one of 1.7. Continue the process until all the 1.7 are completely replaced. Right? Until they are complete. That's a rolling update. It means it replaces the existing pod with a new one. This strategy is, how do I say this? This strategy is you can use this strategy in the case whereby your 1.7 and your 1.8. That means your previous deployment and your new deployment are compatible. Remember, if this is a web application with a database backend, that means at any given time, as you can see in this scenario, 1.7 and 1.8 are going to be running. So customers are going to be exposed to both of them. in your rolling updates deployments. That's one thing I don't like about it. The fact that customers are going to be exposed to both versions of the application during the update or the rollout, right? So this is the rolling update what deployment strategy. If you have any question, please reach out to me. Now let's go to the new strategy, the blue and the green deployment. What is the blue? Right, the one that you have right now. The green, the one that you want. All right, so this we want this to go out, right? We want this to go out, and this is our current deployment. This is our new deployment. In the blue-green deployment strategy, so let's say this is what we have right now in production, right? And we want this to replace it. Instead of replacing the pod, what we simply do, we switch things at the service level. Now, the service is the one that determines who to route the traffic to. If you run this YAML file, this service is going to be routing any request to this port of this deployment. Now, we want to replace that in the blue-green strategy. We want to replace that with our version 2 of the application, which is this guy, right? So let's call this our version 2 of the application. Version 2, and we are going to run in 1.8 instead of 1.7, right? Now we want to replace this in production. So instead of replacing the pod, what we do in this blue-green deployment strategies, we replace the service. Now, what controls which pod gets routed to by this service is the selector. As you can see in this case, the selector is simply saying, please route the traffic to all the pod with this label. And so when this deployment runs, it's going to launch every of its pod with this label, version 1 label. Now, in the case of what? The blue-green deployment strategy, we simply update that selector. We deploy this one, the new version of the application, right? But this new version of the application is not going to be getting traffic because the service is still going to be routing to this port. Now, to switch over, you simply update the selector of the service and tell this. By doing that, you are saying, hey, service, please route all the service requests to, instead of the port from this deployment, to rather the port from this deployment. So therefore, every of our new requests are going to be on the same, they are going to be routed to the same version of the application. So we are not going to run into the situation whereby we have both new version and the old version running side by side. But in this case, we are going to have just the new version being routed to. Now, some of the questions that you may have is, how long does it take for the service to switch over? So that part, I'm not really sure right now. It's something I'm still going to look into, how long it takes for this service to switch over to this port, to the new port selector. So I think it's going to involve, updating our IP table rules on all your nodes, those kind of stuff that is beyond what I'm going to be discussing today. But I think it should be, it depends on how large your deployment cluster is, basically. But it should be, less than a second or couple of seconds. I still prefer this strategy than the rolling updates strategy because this allows the new version of the application to be presented to all our customers at the same time. We also have other deployment strategy like the canary, right? Deployments, right? We have, the A/B testing, right? Deployment strategy. Those are different deployment strategies that I'm going to be looking into sometime down the line. So that's all I have for today. And tomorrow we are also going to introduce a different subject. Thank you.